I'm a pretty competitive guy. You can't be all things to everybody. We all like nice things, but I'm not really driven by nice things. The money to me is symbolic of winning. I don't really want someone to tell me how I should lead. Like, I figured it out over time on my own.
So welcome to Business Untitled, and we have businessman, a good friend of the room, Harvey Spevak, and today he's going to tell us what it means to be the CEO of the best gym in the world that I go to every single day, Equinox. Harvey, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I just want to make sure I get full credit for when you're ready for bikini season next year. Equinox gets credit.
Before this whole podcast started, Mel was fat. And he ran into Harvey, and Harvey said, dude, you can't go through life looking like that. And now he's got him on a program. The guy's looking good.
The funny thing is,
really appreciate that.
I met Harvey. You remember how I met you?
Sitting at breakfast at
the Equinox Hotel.
Yes.
It's so crazy.
As you meet many people.
Many people. I was just there. I don't know how we started talking. I was with
Rich Kleeman.
Yes.
Having breakfast.
Yes.
And then you overheard the conversation and you leaned in and introduced yourself.
Yeah. Typical Mel shit.
Typical Mel.
So we met. Harvey was cool. Somehow we ended up on Instagram together, following each other. And I remember, I'm going to give you some shit, because I remember I was going to the Equinox and I was like, fuck, why do they only give me 3 passes? And so I was like, I just met the owner of Equinox. He could help me with this. And I DM'd him and I was like, hey, what do I have to do to get like some extra passes? And he left me on scene and never wrote back.
A full ghost. I was a little unsettled by first that you DM'd me, and then the specific request, I just forgot to ghost you.
Move. That's why
Full
he's CEO.
ghost.
That's why he's CEO.
That's why he's the CEO.
You got to get paying customers, Mel, not mooches.
So I met Harvey, I think, through Eugene Rem originally.
That's correct, yes.
How we met, you know, when he was working on Rumble and you guys were talking, investing. But how about like telling us a little bit about Equinox, just kind of like the whole story, how you got involved, your journey there a little, just to start out, so our listeners.
Yeah, that's great. So once again, thanks for having me. So 1991, company's founded, starting the Upper West Side of Manhattan. I actually had some sneaker stores in the city, on the Upper West Side primarily, and got to know the original founders of Equinox through that, because we both had a location. Their original location was 76 in Amsterdam, which we still have today, and one of my stores was on Broadway, at 77th and Broadway. So got to know each other a little bit through that, had lots of conversations over the years, and then in end of 98, I decided to join them as president and COO of the company with the goal of becoming CEO. And during that time, 6 months later, I became CEO, and during that time, we were a small business. We had 5 locations, and there was a lot of interest from people to invest in the company. So the original founder said, well, maybe we should take this seriously. So we hired an investment banker. Michael, appreciate this. We hired an investment banker and went about this process. And I said, look, if you guys really want to go, I'll find the money and I'll buy you out. So in 2000, took on 2 private equity partners, and obviously been growing the business ever since. Been through lots of up moments, mostly up moments, but definitely some challenging times too, most recently COVID. And then in 2006, we were on the trajectory to go public, not necessarily imminently going public. We were doing really well. And I was getting frustrated when you have private equity partners, they're all about balance sheet and $1 off of EBITDA and all that kind of stuff versus how do you grow the business? We had a hot hand, how do you really accelerate the growth? And so I said, look, I can't do any more board meetings like this where everybody's talking about the same thing, because all private equity guys, that's all they know how to talk about. So they lean in where they have the expertise. And I said we should diversify the board. They said, fine, who do you want to add to the board? And I said, the first thing that I want to add is real estate expertise. And so I had a relationship with Stephen Ross, both landlord, tenant, friend, and also we both went to Michigan. And so we knew each other, and I said to my partners, I said, I'm going to ask Steven to join the board. And it was the most stressful negotiation I've ever had in history because I had to negotiate with Steven, who God knows what he makes a minute, if not an hour. And I had to tell him, this multi-billionaire, I'm going to pay him $25,000 a year. So I didn't even do it direct with him. I negotiated through, some of you might know a guy named Marty Edelman. Do you know Marty Edelman? So Marty's one of Steven's best friends and a close friend of mine now too. And I negotiated through Marty. So anyway, make a long story short, my investors say, well, can you ask Steven for his bio? I said, well, why don't you guys Google him and then tell me, well, why is he doing this, right? And so, but he and I just had a great relationship, and he joined the board, and 2 board meetings in, he said, why go public? Why don't we just do this together? And, roughly 6 months later, we became partners and been doing it ever since 2006. And have had an absolute phenomenal run. Always been high growth, double-digit growth for many years, very, very profitable. Up until December of 19, where we took on some third-party capital at a pretty strong valuation at the time, and then 120 days later, COVID shows up. So, it has been a great run. It's starting to become a great run again. But we've done a lot of things along the way. We did the hotels. We invested in other brands. We owned SoulCycle. We launched something called Blink Fitness. But it's been a great journey, and I'm super excited about what's ahead now.
What did COVID feel like? Because none of us knew what was happening, right? And your business is people. So what was that like? Was there a moment it was like, fuck, it's all over? What did COVID actually feel like in your shoes?
I'm a pretty competitive guy, and I'm pretty half full versus half empty. I think if there was a historic moment that looked like COVID that we could look back, I think I would have been wildly depressed. But not knowing like how long this is last or how bad it's going to be, the naivete kind of kicked in, and just the competitive side is, we got this, we're going to do this. And so if you think about our situation, March of 20 hits, we have 300 locations, physical locations across the United States, Canada, and London. We have 20,000 employees, and our revenue goes from where it was to zero. No pivot. Not like we can go to e-commerce. There was some talk, maybe we should play the Peloton game, and we all know where that went. And so it was tough for a while. It was really tough. We tried to protect our employees to the best of our ability. I think we did something unprecedented. We got no government support throughout this. We did something where for at least 4 months we kept everybody on the payroll. And we tried to keep it all together as long as possible. Obviously, we had to make some decisions. We told our landlords we weren't paying them. That wasn't very popular, but that's what we told them to do. It was all about survival. The sole strategy was survival. Strategy and the other part of strategy was hope. Seriously, because after a while, there's only so much triage you can do. Then it was just like really just hoping people were going to come back.
Yeah.
And thankfully they did.
The PPP money didn't work because you're too big, or
too big, and we just didn't really fit into the box. Yeah. So we got nothing. Despite having, we went to the government at the time and said, because we have relationships, we said,
you're the kind of business that they should have been supporting.
Well, and a lot of
each branch,
and a lot of our employees, if you think about it, they're young. Some of them are educated, some of them are not. A lot of them are immigrants, front desk employees, maintenance employees, what have you, people that we've given an opportunity. So it was really frustrating. So we said, when the unemployment benefits came out, it was better for our hourly employees to go on unemployment than to stay on our payroll. So in looking out for them, we said to them, we're going to lay you off, we'll bring you back. But emotionally, they didn't want that. So we tried to say to the government, give us the money and we'll give it to the employees. But the employees would feel better that they're still emotionally connected. Yeah. They were scared too. And, we just couldn't convince the government to do that. So
you roughly got $50,000 a year on unemployment for that first year of COVID between the supplement and normal insurance. It was like $48,500. I remember thinking to myself, I'm sitting there, I'm like, that's $25 an hour. Watch, that's going to become the new minimum wage. Because people are going to feel like, this feels like it's dignified. I can actually survive on $25 an hour. And at Bojangles, where we're paying $9 an hour, you can't really survive. And that's kind of what happened when we came out of COVID. People went on a strike. And so what are your trainers? How do you think of wages? And as you said, you got immigrants all the way up. What are like the different buckets of employee wage?
So it obviously varies by what your role is, and so
And location, I guess.
and yeah, location, market, et cetera. But very similar to what you're saying that you probably had. There's some employees that are very similar profile. Now, I mean, it really depends on what you want to put into it. So we have, let's just talk about what we call our talent, which is our programming talent. So a group fitness or a class instructor versus a personal trainer. Those are basically their employees, but they're almost like independent contractors in that their compensation is variable. So it really is up to them. We pay better than anybody in the market, but it's up to them how much they want to put into it, right? So by example, group fitness instructor, if you want to teach 2 classes a week, you're going to make a lot less if you teach 15 classes a week. We kind of look at, for a class instructor, because they're moving around a lot, 15 or 12 to 15 is starting to become a full-time employee because you just can't do 40 hours. Personal trainer, we have, plenty of trainers who are making 6 figures, and then we've got some that are making less. If Mel would train a little bit more, his trainer would be making 6 figures. I hope he's listening to this.
To touch on that, this trainer I started with, initially he was like, I just moved from Boston. I'm going to do this for 2 years, and I'm going into the Army. I was like, all right, Army guy, sounds like a good trainer. I had a conversation with Matt last week about the Army. He was like, nah, I think I'm going to stay at the Equinox. And I was like, what changed? And he was like, he'd been talking to a trainer that does really well and makes about $500,000 a year. I was like, you could make a fucking $500,000 a year training at the Equinox? And he said exactly what you said. He's like, it's going to be a lot of work, but I could kind of dictate my salary by how much work I put in. Versus going to the Army, I can't do that. So Matt changed his whole, life.
That's great.
In the last month, from realizing he could dictate what he makes.
Harvey, you didn't even realize Mel was going to be your new head of recruiting.
Bro, I love
Head of
the
recruiting, head of
Equinox.
personal training, and he's going to be in our campaign next year with his
with his
with his
physique.
shirt off and
For me, Hudson Yards, you know this. Hudson Yards was kind of like, when I was moving there, he was like, I don't know if I'd move there. And then I moved, and shortly after COVID happened. So it was just kind of like a downer to me all the way. I didn't leave my house for I didn't leave my house for 3 months. Like, not even down to the lobby, because I was scared of COVID. Mike dragged me out my house and almost gave me COVID. It was crazy. Twice.
Multiple times.
But then I didn't go to the Equinox because I had a good gym in my building. Then I went to the Equinox, and it became like, they say you need 3 places to feel like a community. One is the deli, one is my doorman, and the other one is Equinox. So now I kind of go there, and it feels like a community to me. And
great.
now I love Hudson Yards.
All right, let me spin this back a little bit because we jumped ahead to your current success. You grew up where? Were you a rich kid, poor? We always ask people, you grew up rich, poor, middle class. Give us a little like the origin story.
So love that question. So I was born in the Bronx, lived there till I was 2, and then moved to an area called Rockland County. I don't know who knows the Rockland County. It's on the other side of the Tappan Zee Bridge. We probably, I don't know, I think the house was a $30,000 house at the time. My father never went to college. Worked at a store or a chain of stores called Alexander's, which was kind of a valued-based department store chain in and around New York.
Before NATO take that over?
So it was family-owned by the Farkas family. They lost control of it ultimately for NATO. My father was a lifer there and started as a stock boy and ultimately became the highest-ranking non-Farkas in Alexander's. And so I grew up initially probably lower middle class, but with my father's drive and work ethic, we kind of moved, I would say, to middle, maybe upper middle class over time. But I think my work ethic comes a lot from what my father kind of instilled in me. More through osmosis, watching him in action. He was traveling globally all the time, working his tail off. But it showed to me that hard work pays off.
Were you a fitness freak as a young guy? Were you an athlete? You went to Michigan, which is a pretty big time football school.
And can I? And I
think?
want to
You're a little small for football.
and put another piece on that too, which is like, what was it about Equinox that really attracted you to it? In a sense, was it because of that, or how did you really target that as like?
So I was always into sports as a kid. Played hockey growing up. Played a little soccer as well. And in college, kind of found strength training, and back then it wasn't a big deal, but kind of found that. So it kind of started satisfying some personal passions. And then when it had nothing to do with going to Michigan. In Michigan, I played intramural hockey. I wasn't good enough to play the varsity level, or the school, because it's a very, very good hockey school, like a very good hockey school. I don't know with you guys how it is about a wrestling school, but I know it's a really good hockey school. Is it a good wrestling school? It's pretty much good at most sports, and I will point out number 2 in the country in football right now. So there was a passion there, and then when I graduated, I actually did the Wall Street thing for a little while, but there was an entrepreneurial spirit in me, and I suffocated. I was at J.P. Morgan, and I couldn't deal with it, sitting at my desk, like changing down to the desk and what have you. So I got into the sneaker business with my childhood best friend, and then ultimately that led me to. I did that for a while. Realized retail is a tough business, so I got out. Didn't really know what I was going to do. But my neighbor at the time was a guy named Roland Betts on the Upper West Side. We're literally building the building. And we got to know each other walking our dogs. This has been reported in the press. Got to know he had a bulldog, which was pretty ugly, and I had a bull terrier that was pretty ugly. And my bull terrier didn't get along with any other dogs except for Roland's dog. So we would run into each other in the Riverside Park walking at night. And I heard that some rumblings that he was going to do this thing called Chelsea Piers. Yeah. And so, but people said, be careful because he's just going to steal whatever you share with him. So I remember one night in the park, I said, I got some ideas. He goes, well, what are they? I said, no, why don't we sit down? And I went to see him and his partner. I was a young guy at the time. And I started sharing some ideas, and they kind of stopped me. And they said, well, when can you start? And then the two of them, they hadn't raised capital yet. So then the two of them started fighting in front of me about, should I start now? Should they wait till I had money and all this kind of stuff? And I was like, do I really want to work with these guys? But that led me more into kind of the recreational side of things, which then ultimately led me to, Equinox and pursuing a career. So it was more of the entrepreneurial spirit, satisfying another personal passion on the sports and fitness side that led me into all of this.
The Chelsea Piers story, as an aside, is a future episode. It's a kind of a great story how those guys put that thing together and built that empire. It's a
phenomenal story.
Yeah.
I mean, it really started, there used to be, still called Sky Rink at Chelsea Piers, but you might know this from being in New York. There was one sheet of ice kind of in the Hudson Yards area, the top of the Hancock building, but one sheet of ice is not economic. But it was a nonprofit Sky Rink. So Roland said, he was on the board, he said, why don't we move it? And in looking for a new location to move, it's hard to find column-free space that's big. Someone said, go check out the piers. And the piers were just dilapidated. Yeah. Hookers, drug dealers, abandoned cars, dead bodies. I mean, there was all kinds of stuff.
Really?
Oh,
good
yeah.
old days. Good old days.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You would probably have enjoyed some of that, right?
A little bit.
So it was a crazy time, but it was state property. Yeah. So the state said, if you lease it from us, we'll give you a cheap lease, but you got to put the capital to work. And there were some dicey moments early on when we opened because we overspent, but ultimately,
so you started there.
Oh yeah,
awesome.
Yeah.
So Equinox it's really like developed from, it's like a fitness brand into a lifestyle brand, right? How would you describe the culture of it? How do you keep that going? Like, what are the most important things about it?
And if you think about it, you went through the gym wars. There was tons of gyms for a while. Now we think of Equinox, but there was Gold's Gym, and there were all kinds of
New York Sports.
Yeah, New York Sports, and just even in the city there were 4 or 5.
Reebok.
So when I first joined Equinox at the end of '98, it had already been doing well. It already had somewhat of a celebrity following, but I saw a bigger opportunity to fuel that, but also build it into a national lifestyle brand. And so one of the first things I did was I said to Judy, who's sitting here, I said, we're no longer, at the time, there were fitness roundups. So in the newspaper or the magazine, which is what we had back then, what would do is they would be, what you just mentioned, Equinox, Gold Gyms, everybody on a matrix or a chart, and what the offering was. And we were always more expensive and had less stuff. Yeah. So I said, we're in a category of one. We're not doing those anymore. And everybody's like, well, what do you mean? If you're not on the list, then how do people? I said, we're not with them. We're something unique, and we're going to prove that point. So over time, we really focused on the uniqueness of the brand, uniqueness of the experience, the quality of the experience, the lifestyle aspect, and we invested in the brand. And the business just took off, and we just separated ourselves from everybody else to the point where people refer to us now more as clubs and everybody else as gyms. Yeah. And so we really pushed hard at that. And then as we did that, we started taking the brand more fashion forward, more lifestyle. So we started using, award-winning photographers who did a lot of fashion stuff, Stephen Klein, Sante DeRazio, Ellen Von Earth, to do our campaigns, and that just kind of tipped off the fashion community. So when you start doing those things, it just started fueling. And then people like Mel said, wait, I want to be part of this community, or once they're there, I love this community.
Mm-hmm. Mel loves a brand. he will never go to a place that's not a brand. But it's brand, when you have emotional connection to the brand, that's when things change dramatically.
100%.
When you're not transactional with the brand, but when you're emotional. And I think that when it comes to lifestyle, luxury, and experience and community, I don't think there's anybody out there, not just in our category, but in very few categories, that really understand that better than we have.
Right.
How do you keep it going is the biggest challenge, right? Mm-hmm. So you try to, in our mind, try not to be trendy, but you always want to stay relevant. So there's moments in time where you do unique things, whether it be newsworthy things to show you're a leader. So a great example is that during COVID, we came out early on and were the most far-reaching consumer brand to require a vax mandate. Mm-hmm. Controversial, of course, but we said employee, member, SoulCycle rider, Blink member, if you're not vaccinated, you can't come in. Mm-hmm. And people were like, how can you do that? Well, we just did, regardless of government requirement. And it was amazing to watch our team, because even our team, their heads came up, their chest, they were down, they were beaten up, right, from COVID. And all of a sudden they're like, this is the brand that I've always loved, leading, being bold, not afraid to take risks. And so there's moments like that when you do things like that. We did another thing that I'll just highlight, January of this year. So in our world, New Year's resolutions is a big thing. It's the biggest crock of shit. I don't know if I could. Am I allowed to use that words here? That's fine, right?
Yeah, anything you want to.
Okay. I can say fuck, shit.
Fuck, shit.
I was supposed to read a book. I was supposed to read a fiction book a week, and I think I got 3.
So what happens is there's huge press coverage on New Year's resolutions. The gym world, I'll call it for a second, preys on that to get you to sign up and hopes you don't show up. So historically, most people who join a gym in January, by February, 80% have stopped using it. 80%. Wow, that's crazy. Okay? For us, because we obviously offer a different experience, unique experience, and we charge more for it, people are using it. I mean, you see it. People are engaged in what we do, which is great. And so for us, in February, 90% are still using it because they're committed. Right, like it's addictive. Like you're now, like, right, what's happening, and, right, which is great. You've taken the drug, so to speak, right, and it feels good. And so we came out with a campaign in January of this year that said we don't speak January, and we basically flipped the finger at the entire industry. Mm-hmm. We said no, that's not. We're only for the committed. And everybody's like, this is crazy. You can't. Well, we just did, and so. We had a huge month from a new membership. We stopped selling memberships on January 1st. We said, we're just taking the day off. And business took off in January. We got a lot of play because a lot of others in the Planet Fitness of the world, which is so different from us, but the crunches of the world, they came out and said, we're for everybody. Well, we said we're for everybody too. We just want you, if you're committed. If you're committed, we're going to help you get results. So that moments like that, and of course, there's other moments, but when you do things like that, and we're going to do some cool stuff in January again this year, more from a creative aspect, but when you do stuff like that, that's what kind of keeps you relevant and top of mind, and being a leader, right? Yeah.
So one of the big trends these days is cold plunge, sauna, spa-ish, hammam, steam. We go to this Russian schwitz on Sundays down at Wall Street and hit the cold plunge and sit around in its very hot sauna. Is that getting integrated? How do you think of those things?
Trends.
The trends. And is that part of what you see your mission as?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things I always talk about at team is about innovating or dying. You don't want to be trendy, but you want to also curate what makes sense. So at Hudson Yards, which is one of our most recent clubs that we've opened in New York, plus we've got the hotel there, we've got indoor pool, hot and cold. And then we've got what is now recognized as the best spa in New York and one of the top 10 in the world. In our spa, we also have infrared, steam, contrast therapy, IV drips.
Got it all.
We've got this thing that's like it's like almost like a dome where you sit in this dome.
To go with a hangover.
Where we absolutely.
What's the sleep thing called? I actually did that. That was good.
Yeah, we have like a little bit of a sleep bed.
Yeah.
Right, where you lay on it, get you the equivalent of 3 hours of sleep in 30 minutes. We do cryotherapy. So we think all of this is the biohacking aspect and all this stuff. A lot of it is here to stay. Mm-hmm. And so you'll see us doing more and more of it in the future. You know, if you think about cold plunge by way of example, I mean, athletes have been going in stainless tubs with ice forever, right? So this is not just a new thing, but people are definitely embracing it.
Did you plunge yourself?
Huh? I do the infrared sauna.
So
I work out hard, so I figure, I got to go easy on myself.
Here's a question, right?
Mel's a plunger these days.
Yeah, I do 10 minutes a day.
10 minutes?
Yeah.
With us or?
Yeah.
Okay.
What else would I
don't know.
fucking do? I'm an Equinox member. So here's a question, right?
So you're the one who stays 10 minutes and everybody's like, why is this guy not getting out?
Yeah.
Right?
I'm that
10
guy.
minutes is tough.
10 minutes is a long time.
I can't do 10 minutes outside. Inside, that's 10 minutes.
The hot tub.
Well, no,
it's not.
this cold inside. The outside is a little bit
It's like
colder.
37 or something.
We
Somebody
should do the cryo. That's negative.
Yeah, fuck that.
No, the cryo's good. 3 minutes.
Crowd 3 minutes, I've done. It's fun.
It's
you
fun.
come out
Yeah.
and your endorphins get kicked up. So I remember this. You're in this tiny little set of underwear because you don't want to burn your privates, and you're freezing, and you get out, and there's this lady there, and I'm like, yes, huh. And then she's looking at me. I was like, sorry, I don't know where that came from. I had no idea where it came from. But you get this huge endorphin surge, and I just felt like screaming.
You do. Like the first minute, you're like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
Right? And music's playing. The second minute, you're like, oh, I got this. And then you just start bouncing around a little bit. It's only 3 minutes. But you feel amazing.
But here's the question, right? So the Equinox is like a drug for me and everyone else, a good drug. But there's a drug because of we're probably the most obese country there is, right? So that's why gyms work so well. That's why the Equinox works so well, along with adding a lifestyle. But now we have Ozempic and Moderna and drugs like that that's coming along that if it goes the way they project it to go, is going to kill obesity in America. Do you see that as a challenge?
But your clients aren't obese. I mean,
No, even if you're not obese, right? It's just a way to lose weight versus
Going to the
traditional going to the gym.
It's like a hack.
Ozempic, yeah, I know 100 people that's on it, right? Do you see that as some kind of challenge? And if so, what do you plan?
So let me bifurcate what it means to us,
Yeah.
and then what it means to
Society.
people, right? Society. I think it's not completely understood yet, right?
Yeah.
There's some known side effects, but it hasn't been out there long enough to really know what it does or doesn't. Well, we know what it does, but we don't know what the bad side of what it does fully, I think. And that's what the kind of more measured medical people would say. I'm not a doctor, obviously. But I think and actually Wes, who's been on, Wes and I had this conversation, I think for people who are obese, don't know how to get out of that, and are at risk of getting diabetes or have diabetes, high blood pressure, and living a miserable life, whether it be medically, emotionally, or whatever it may be. And it's a great jumpstart. Okay? So I think there's value to that to society. And then there's the people who want to lose 15, 20 pounds who are using that as, I'll say a little bit of a lazy way to jumpstart. I think it's generally okay if it's a jumpstart. Yeah. But there are implications to what it does to your metabolism. And so those people, and I know a lot of people are doing it too, who I think are doing the best of it, is they embrace a change in lifestyle at the same time. So not just a reduction in appetite. So yes, they're losing weight, but then they start thinking about how I'm going to eat differently. And most importantly, working out. So when you go on Ozempic, the first thing that goes is your muscle.
Yeah.
And your metabolism slows. So a lot of people say, oh, I'm going to do it for a little bit of time and I'm lose. Well, as soon as you go off it, your appetite's back, but now you've got a vastly reduced or slowed metabolism. That's a big problem. And so those who couple it with working out and eating right, I think it could be very good for them. So taking that further, for Equinox, I actually see it as a big opportunity for us because there's plenty of our existing members or people who aren't members who are using Ozempic to jumpstart, but then they recognize they need to change their lifestyle behavior, and that's where we do better than anybody.
Yeah, the muscle mass thing, I saw Peter Attia did a thing on that. I did more genre for 6 weeks as one of those guys who was like, I'm the heaviest I've ever been. And I went from 195 to 180 like that, 6 weeks. Be like, God, you look good. I just didn't feel powerful. And as a wrestler, if you don't feel powerful, you just feel like misery.
But you probably didn't stop working out, though, because
I did. I wasn't working because I had an injury. And it was just weird how much less power I had. And so I saw this Peter Attia thing. He said, you're losing muscle mass as fast as you're losing weight. Yeah. And I quit the next day.
Oh, yeah, right.
Gained all the way back like that.
Right, because your appetite goes.
And then I just lost weight the old-fashioned way and kind of got back to the same level.
Yeah.
So you see it as an asset.
So I
to
see,
some
I see it
extent.
as an opportunity,
Yeah.
and we're working on some, I would say, let's call them loosely protocols of what to do while you're on Ozempic or if you come off it.
I think there's going to be a big business
So I
Yeah.
do,
Yeah.
I do.
because you got to have protein and you got to have weights.
Right.
Yeah.
But we're not necessarily going to get in the business of administering Ozempic
Yeah,
like others
yeah.
are doing,
Yeah.
but definitely helping people that have chosen to do it. There's a bigger play that we're really going to focus on, which is all about longevity, which I'm happy to talk about. But
Yeah.
there's a lot there thinking about your health span versus your lifespan.
Right.
So we all now think about, yes, we want to live longer, but nobody wants to be in a bad situation or not being able to function well as you get older. So how do you take care of yourself now? And younger people are starting earlier and earlier, but how do you take care of yourself now so you have a really robust life for the years year round?
Right.
Yeah,
And there's a big opportunity, and that's the Wild West, but we're real excited.
How
about
have you seen the change between, if you think about like there was weightlifting for muscles and there was endurance for endurance, and now you've got like mobility training, and what's the shift been and where are we now? What's like the ideal mix?
Well, it's interesting. So functional training has been around for a while, kind of accelerated during COVID. I think part because people better understood it, in part because I was able to get a kettlebell at home, or I was able to get a strap at home, or think, right, that's all I could get to, that kind of thing. But if you go into our clubs now, where we see a shift in behavior is people are back to a lot of strength training. Squat racks, old-fashioned chest presses, our busiest area on the strength floor is the dumbbell area. Has been for a while. It's probably busier than ever before. You're seeing more of that. There's a slight shift away from cardio. I think that's going to come back quickly. I think that's because people found the outdoors during COVID, but I think that as winter, that'll start kicking in more because people are doing sprints and what have you. So interval training's a big deal. And then on the kind of class side, a lot of the softer modalities. So Pilates, yoga has also kind of seen an uptick coming out of COVID. But our industry, if you will, is somewhat cyclical. But it's just kind of like boxing's got a moment, rumble, and boxing's not a big deal anymore, right? And so there's not a lot of innovation. I think more of the innovation comes from things like we do that's more about the experience and unique aspects to that, or taking further like the longevity stuff that we're going to play in.
So is that, when you look at the future of Equinox, sometimes you've done vertical expansions, hotels being one of them. You talked about longevity. That's kind of like let's call it a horizontal expansion. How do you look at that 5-10 years out? Like, are you just, focused on better and better clubs, or is there some longevity, is it? Or what are you thinking?
Well, I mean, those who work with me and for me know that I've got a little bit of healthy paranoia, and I'm always kind of pushing and thinking and trying. There's a little frenetic aspect to it. Sometimes things work, sometimes things don't work. But, the hotel thing, since you brought it up, and I know you know a lot about hotels, was an obvious one to us, where it wasn't obvious to a lot of people, certainly in the hospitality or hotel world. So we saw that our members were starting to stay at shitty hotels because when they're on the road, it was important for them to get their Equinox community, get their Equinox experience. And so we said, well, this doesn't really make sense because they want to stay at a better hotel, but they can't. And at the same time, you saw in hotels, they were starting to knock out rooms and put an extra treadmill or an extra bench because people on the road were now asking more and more about what's your hotel gym. And so we saw an opportunity. I think one of our great strengths is anticipating the needs of the consumer because most people don't know what they want, just in life. Right. If you ask most people, they don't know, right? You can ask them at Bojangles, are you doing a good job, or one of your hotels? But if you ask them, what would we do differently? They don't really know, right? I mean, none of us would have ever come up with Uber. Right? What was the most obvious thing? So on the hotel side, we said, oh, this is interesting. This is a big opportunity. It'd be great for the brand, great way to further our ecosystem of unique ways for our community to engage with us. And so we embarked on this journey to conceive what would be an Equinox Hotel, which has been an absolutely amazing journey.
Challenging?
Sure, but you know what's great? So I'm a big traveler.
Yeah.
Have probably too many opinions, but never operated a hotel before. Hired the former president and COO of Four Seasons, a guy named Chris Norton, to be our CEO, who's arguably, if not the best, one of the best hoteliers in the world, 30-year Four Seasons vet. We actually had a conversation with Four Seasons to actually join forces to do the hotels together with the CEO and Chris. And in the meeting, Chris said, my concern is you're the future and we might be the past. And because Four Seasons was starting to lose a little bit of its steam, even though they would do a good job from a quality perspective. And we said, well, we don't really need to partner Four Seasons. We just need to hire Chris. So we hired Chris. But Chris and I became a good yin-yang because he knows what is 100% important in a hotel room or a hotel. At the same time, based on my experience or through the Equinox lens, why do you do this way? Why do you do that way? And I remember having a conversation early on with Ian Schrager, who's obviously legendary in what he's done. And he said, don't listen to anybody, Harvey, just go with your intuition. And that just kind of gave me permission to just kind of think differently. And I think we beat the crap out of each other getting there. But fast forward, the hotel, as you all know, is doing extremely well. And just got named one of the best 50 hotels in the world.
Oh, wow.
Came out a couple weeks ago. And there's only 2 in the U.S. that made the list. And we're one of them.
Wow.
So
What's
it's
the
a new
other
kid
one?
on the block. We're pretty proud. Amman in Midtown.
Really?
Where's the next one going up?
So we've got about 15 hotels in the pipeline, about half domestic, half international. We're building everything ground up. We're not converting anything. So a little bit hard to answer, but because it'll probably be another 3 years or so. We got some going on in the Middle East, and then we got some here in the country. So we'll see. But we hotels will be a big part of our future, not just clubs.
So here's some of the fun questions. You still collect sneakers?
I do.
What's like your holy grail? What's the most expensive sneakers you ever bought?
That's a great question. Probably nothing too crazy in terms of what I spent money on. Probably some of the luxury or fashion brands, they're more expensive than the Nikes and Adidas. But I like them both. So I literally have, I don't know, I've got hundreds of pairs. It's kind of a bad habit. So when I had my sneaker store, so you asked about my early days. Growing up in high school, I worked at the local mall at the equivalent of a Foot Locker. It was called Sport Shed. And I did it for years. And so it was in the days of Superstars, Puma Clydes. Nike kind of really wasn't even a thing yet.
Yeah.
They just had started becoming a thing. So going back to then, so today I still have Superstars and you name the Nike. I use them. I like a certain pair to run in.
The blue Clydes with the yellow.
Still around. Blue with the
yellow.
Well, that's when they started getting like cooler, right? It used to be just with white, or the Superstars used to be just white with black, and then the red started showing up, and the green started showing up, and the Sambas and all that kind of stuff. So I got way too many sneakers, and my daughters, who are teenagers now, it's kind of funny. They used to saying every time I got a new pair of sneakers, they would roll their eyes like, "You really need another piece of sneakers?" I goes, like, "Yeah, sure, of course, why not?" So they would be like, "You're not a teenager anymore. You can't be wearing sneakers like that." And I said, "Of course I can." So of course I just ignored them. Now they ask me to buy them sneakers,
That's
and I
funny.
pick them out. My teenage daughters.
That's crazy.
So I love my sneakers.
And here's another question. 2 questions, actually. When did you make your first $1 million? And when was another time you felt like, holy shit, I think I made it, where there's no turning back?
Still waiting to make that first $1 million.
You know what? You need to raise the membership fee then.
Sorry, tomorrow. You know, we all like nice things, but I'm not really driven by nice things. The money to me is symbolic of winning, meaning of accomplishing the goal. So I always thought about it that way. And I get great pleasure when we have monetized the business or raise extra money and it goes to the team that is so passionately committed to me and the company and the success we've had. That's what probably gets me, the most satisfaction is seeing them so happy. So, December of 19, we raised some fresh capital at an unexpectedly high valuation at the time. And the team wasn't aware of it until told them. And they were shocked at the price, but they were even more shocked what they were going to get. And seeing that on 100 plus people's faces is just, that just awesome. Really makes it great. Makes it all worth all the effort. So coming out of COVID, I will tell you, I feel more committed to that team than ever before.
Yeah.
Because
went through a battle.
We went through a battle, and I want to make sure they get rewarded for going through that battle.
What was your major in college?
Finance and accounting.
Oh, so you started in that.
Yeah. Got a BBA and MBA at Michigan.
Who are your mentors? Or do you have mentors?
I wouldn't say I have mentors, but I definitely have people that over the years have influenced me more by just association and spending time with them versus saying, how should I do this or how should I do that? Roland Betts was definitely one of those from Chelsea Piers. Roland was also George Bush Jr.'s best friend. So I kind of spent a lot of time, was very close to Roland, spent a lot of time with him when George was running for president the first time. So it was kind of a close to a front row seat, which was pretty cool. And Roland was pretty open with me, which was neat. And then, it doesn't get really much better than Stephen Ross. He's just terrific. He's been great to me. He's such a big thinker. You'll appreciate this. I always describe Stephen as he loves to be the contrarian. And if you said, if I went into him tomorrow or said to you guys right now, hey, I want to move the Hudson River to the other side of New Jersey. Everybody else say, you're out of your mind. Why would you? Stephen's like, it's a little crazy, but let's sit down and talk about it. Let's have dinner. So he just thinks big. So spending time with him, it's always big thinking, creative thinking, solution-oriented, love a good challenge. And so all that stuff, you leave him and you always come away saying, I'm not doing enough. I'm not thinking big enough. I'm not thinking creatively enough. So I get mentorship that way. And there's others like that have been very good to me.
Speaking of thinking big, the Vessel, right outside your hotel. Some people love it. Some people don't like it. It got closed. That to me is wildly unfortunate. I'm actually a huge fan, but it's very polarizing in terms of people's feel for it. What's your pro Vessel, neutral Vessel?
I'm
going to get it reopened for us.
I'm not involved again in the reopening, but I'm pro Vessel, and I think it's symbolic in a lot of ways of Stephen. Hudson Yards was such a bold initiative, and obviously, a very expensive one at that. But he saw something that nobody else saw, and now you talk about how Hudson Yards is your community.
Yeah.
And so the Vessel to me is just symbolic of. You can't listen to what everybody says. It's important to have a point of view. I always talk about from a brand perspective. You asked me about brand before. In my mind, the best brands are those who have a point of view. Mm-hmm. You can't be all things to everybody. Right. Some can. Walmart and Amazon, yes, okay. But generally, most brands that are consumer facing, those who do the best have a point of view of what they stand for, and it's okay not to be all things to all people. Right. So I've publicly said this. I said to our team, we're open to everybody join Equinox. Mm-hmm. But you mentioned before about people at Equinox generally more conditioned. It's true. It's not because we don't want the unconditioned. It's because that's who feels more comfortable, and that's okay.
Yeah. I think that's just such an important point that you're not everything to everybody. It keeps you out of the generic space, out of the bloodbath, of trying to compete on this other level. So I think that's an amazing. What are some other brands that you kind of think about in that context that really do it well, that have walk their own path in a similar way?
I'm going to state some of the obvious ones, and I'll state some less obvious. Nike, Apple. I mean, Apple very clearly, right? You know what they stand for. You know, most people like it, but you don't have to like it, but you know what they stand for. Same thing with Nike. And Nike's not afraid to put their goods out there and be a little controversial if it's true to who they are. So the authenticity thing is very important to me personally and for the brand. I think Gary Freeman and Restoration Hardware have done a tremendous job.
Shocking. Yeah.
You know, almost akin, like I compare it a lot on our side, and Gary's a friend, but to our team, because Gary has taken, he may not like me to saying it this way, but you know, basically a commodity product, towels and couches, and made a lifestyle brand. And we took a commodity.
Great restaurants.
And great restaurants, but that's all part of the lifestyle. And now he's got hotel rooms and spas coming. You know, the same thing, Equinox. We took commodity product, a treadmill's a treadmill, a bench is a bench is a bench. And we create a lifestyle brand, which engages people emotionally, and that's where you have, I think, much greater success.
What's another industry that is a commoditized industry where there's an opportunity to do that? Not that you're going to go
Not
into
going to
it.
give up the trade secrets.
So, you know, a trade secret. And nothing to do with that.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate that. Next question.
I think about that a lot, though, the fact that it's like really a commoditized, like it's like treadmills. It's, you know, I mean, all the other players were just selling on the basis of like price, and you know, we have just more treadmills for cheaper, essentially, and it's pretty impressive to take that to
break away
create
from
a
the pack.
premium. Yeah. I think boutique hotels did that to some degree. Like what I saw, what Schrager did, what Standard did, right, was really take something that was heads and beds and really like elevated it with something that was brand focused and not for everybody, but was really succcitional.
Look,
What do you do besides work?
Yeah.
It sounds like you
See him at Zero Bond a lot.
No, you got to go there. I knew that was coming.
charities, politics, something else. To drive you a little bit?
You know, politics I stay away from, and largely because of what I do. I mean, you know, me and Equinox is synonymous, and I believe, you know, we are this diverse and inclusive community. I've always believed you stay away from politics and religion because those are the two most emotionally charged topics you can get to with people. I mean, I work really hard. My life is intertwined with my work. I have a little fun, like Mel said, see me at Zero Bond and places like that. We're also investors and big believer in what Scott's doing there. And then my daughters are my everything. I'm super close with them, and then like just like that, have a little fun. I love traveling. I love traveling.
Where's some of your favorite places?
This summer, I spent some time in Saint-Tropez, which of course is just one big party.
It's fun.
It's
It's just fun.
and no matter how many times you go,
It's fun.
It's just fun,
I
right?
haven't been there in a while. I need to go
You
back.
just gotta. You can't go for more than 3 or 4 days because it could destroy you pretty fast. I mean, because it's just 24 hours.
Did Greece this summer. Greece was fun.
I went to on the same trip Sardinia, which was great. I just got back from out of the country in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, which is always, you know, Dubai. You know,
I was in Dubai yesterday.
Oh, were you? So you know, when were you there before? Before yesterday? How long ago?
Probably
It
a
was-
year ago.
No, not even.
How much has it changed since you were there?
Even a year it changed.
It changes so
We was there
rapidly.
like 6 months ago. That was a year ago?
That was a year ago.
Wow.
F1 was a year ago.
And it changed since then?
Oh, yeah.
I was there in January, and things have changed.
Good change.
I mean, I don't know if it's good or bad. It
The
just
building,
changed. New buildings, new F&B concept, new hotels. I stayed at the this time just to check it out. I stayed at the Royal Atlantis, which was, you know, Vegas and Dubai. I mean, you can name it, they got it. You know, 20 restaurants and nightclub this and fountain that. It was cool. It was cool.
What's a book that's influenced you? Anything that?
All right, I'm gonna hurt my own cause here. So if you come into my office is at Hudson Yards in the same building as the hotel and the club. So Mel, stop by anytime. Anytime you got like an extra couple minutes, I'm always.
I'm going to come for those, the passes.
I got them like just sitting in my top drawer. I mean, I don't
That's good.
have drawers. I don't have drawers anymore. So if you come into my office, I've got these shelves with every best-selling business book ever written, or kind of nonfiction, great book. People send them to me all the time. And I'm embarrassed to say I haven't read any of them. So people walk in my office and they think,
What a reader.
He must be a genius. I mean, look, he's got all these books. And I don't read any of them. And why I don't read them is because I don't really want someone to tell me how I should lead. Like I figured it out over time on my own, whether it be to the question, Mike, you asked about mentors or seeing what others do in action versus, okay, here's the 3 things I'm taking away from this book. It just confuses you.
Just, I want to like, what was it, or how did you approach when a lot of people I think have jobs out of college, banker, lawyer, things. I think making that leap is a big thing, right? To be an entrepreneur, or to give up what's the really sure thing. Like, do you remember kind of like how you were framing that or thinking, or have advice, I guess, if you're kind of in a job that's a good job, but really have a passion for something else as you did?
So I'm not as calculated. Some people in their careers want to, I'm here and my next move in 5 years is over here. In 5 years, I'm going to make a left turn. I've never been that calculated. I've always kind of believed if I work hard and follow my passion, good things will come. And I've always betted on myself. I bet on myself. So I've never been worried about my ability to make enough money to put food on the table or what have you. Now, that changes once you have, you get married or have kids or you have mortgages or what have you. But I've always just kind of, bet on myself. And so, in my 20s, I was just like, you know what, I'm just going to go run the sneaker business with my childhood best friend and it'll be great. We'll work during the day in jeans and a T-shirt and get some cool kicks. And at night, we'll, go and have a good time. So we did that for like 5 years and it was fun. It was hard. It was tiring, but you're in your 20s. So I remember my father at the time, who once again didn't have a college education, was so beside himself that I was going to go from working at, this institution, J.P. Morgan,
right,
and go sell basically socks and jocks for a living. And he's like,
what happened to the jock? The jock strap is just gone.
The jock shop is completely gone.
The Dodo
cups are still around.
Yeah, you're too young.
Yeah.
Do you not know what a cup is?
No.
Dave, do you
I don't know if I want to know what
I know
cup
what
is.
I played lacrosse in high school in addition to wrestling, so we wore cups.
The same thing in hockey.
Yeah.
Are you guys going to
20
Are you going to tell them what a cup is?
I don't want to know what cup is. This sounds like some shit I don't
This
want
would
to
go
know.
with your outfit for the other night.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You should have seen his outfit the other night. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you went as Harvey.
Yeah. How'd I do?
I noticed you.
Yeah, because I couldn't notice you.
You've been 25 years at Equinox, roughly.
Yes.
You got 10 more in you, 20 more in you. Is this you're going to die an Equinox man, or is this the chapter in your life?
Oh, no, I'm going to die an Equinox man. I want to do other things within our ecosystem and build out our ecosystem. But this is where I belong. I've got a phenomenal team.
You got an Equinox tattoo yet?
I don't have any tattoos.
Wait, you don't have one
I
tattoo?
don't have one tattoo. That's
crazy.
We gotta get.
I've been thinking about it.
Yeah.
A small one.
You got to get an Equinox tattoo.
I do?
It's not real till you have
So
an
where
Equinox
is it going to
tattoo.
go?
On your neck.
On my neck? I always thought you were going to tell me up here. So
Right on your neck.
I wouldn't do an Equinox tattoo. I would do something else. I would do your spirit animal or.
Look, the
something
first thing
else.
that makes me over $200 million, I'm getting it tattooed. It could be Mike and Dave.
Dave's face.
what are you going to do?
Dave's face on one
a big part with Mike and Dave in the heart?
Over 200 million. I'm telling you right now for the world to see.
Oh, well, first we do one listener question at the end, so I just have to ask this, right? Because we're trying to respond. People put things in the comments, but this one is just off the cuff. Someone has $100,000 to invest. It was left to them, let's just say. So it's a big amount of money for them, but it's not something that was say hard earned over many years. Generally, where do you put it? Where's what move do you make with it? I know that's not a lot of context, but just kind of what's
two knee jerks. One is bet on yourself. So depending upon what you're doing in life, whether you have a business or you aspire to start a business, that's where I would go first. And if you're not betting on yourself, then I would make a bet on something that you are knowledgeable about. So let's just say you want to play the public markets, which Mike knows much better than I do. Do it in something that you really understand the brand or the business or what have you. So you might have your own inside perspective in that. That'd be
well said. Well said. Mike, what about you?
Where to put that money?
Yeah.
Today I actually buy Bitcoin. I got to say that. Listen, I'm really, really worried about the current state of, fiscal policy in the United States and abroad. The thing about fiscal policy is your balance sheet, right? Your checkbook at home. The U.S. has spent way more money than we should have spent, and we're about to pay the price for it. And so I think, in the short run, stocks might go up, but over a medium term, it wouldn't surprise me if stocks go up and down and really don't go anywhere. And so I think the stock market, which is usually where people put their money, is a little bit trouble. Real estate usually is a good bet with 8% mortgages. It gets really expensive really fast, and so I'd wait on that. I like gold. I like silver. I like Bitcoin. I like all these things that should benefit from chaos in the world. You see what's going on in Israel, in Palestine. You see what's going on in our election. I mean, it's shocking. We have two candidates that nobody wants as president. We've never had a situation like this where, like, the majority of the country wants neither of them to run. And one of them is going to be our president unless something crazy happens.
Before the ounce of gold, we got to ask you the two questions that we ask all our guests. If you was president for a day, what would you do? And if you had a superpower, what would it be?
On the first one, and I'm glad you asked because I was going to ask myself the questions, is I agree with everything that Mike said, but it's so upsetting the amount of hate that's in the world in so many different directions. And so if I was president, I don't know what the solve is, but I would work on a long-term strategy to cool people off and get to a point where people really start believing in humanity again. Because we as a world, not just the Middle East, a world, the amount of hate is crazy. I mentioned before politics and religion always to stay away from. Those have always been emotional. But if we're sitting here right now and we just spent the last hour talking about politics, old days used to be, we might disagree, but then afterwards we go out and have a drink together, right? Now
we hate each other.
F you, I don't want to see you again, you're horrible. I mean, it's bad.
Yeah.
It's nasty. It's gotten really, really bad. And so I think the world can't get to a good place without somehow diffusing that. And that's a big task, but that's where my focus would be.
And that could be your superpower too. Whoosh, Mr. Peace.
Superpower?
Peace
What would be the
angel.
superpower? Something fun.
Something fun?
Yeah,
I like that, Peace Angel.
I like that.
Superpower.
Maybe you could give Mike hair again, like yours.
That's a tough one. Sorry, Mike. I would say I've got a creative side of me, but I would say musical talent. I've got no
You know what?
musical talent.
I would
love
sign you
music,
then.
but I'm terrible.
You're terrible too, though.
You can start right now and try to freestyle if you want.
No, it would be really embarrassing. None of you would talk to me again.
All right, Dave.
All right, so at the end,
We always have a drum roll.
Harvey Spevak, chairman of Equinox, very wise guy, said a lot of good stuff here today, but we always try to leave our listeners with what we call an ounce of gold, which is kind of like your little nugget of wisdom for the day.
For the entrepreneur,
And as
for
part of that,
whoever.
we give an ounce of gold.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate
Just
that.
going up the
That's
value.
great.
Yeah.
I'm going to buy more based on what you just said. I think I probably just answered the question. So without being repetitive, I would say be guided by doing the right thing. I think that I can look back at my business career and my personal life. I'm divorced. When I get divorced, it's always could be very bad. I was guided by what I viewed as doing the right thing and going through that. And I have a very good relationship with my ex sitting here today. Professionally, there have been some tough moments. COVID's one of them, 9/11's another, but other moments. And I've always been guided by what I believe is doing the right thing. And when in doubt, you're probably doing the wrong thing. And so that has always served me well because at the end of the day, I want people to look at me with respect. I've never believed as a leader that I necessarily need to win the popularity contest, but I want people to respect me. And being respected means a lot of things, including doing the right thing, doing what you say. And so I know that's a little cliche, but that's always how I always thought about it.
Awesome.
Well done. Amazing.
Well, Harvey, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you very
having me.
much.
It's fun.
Thank
Good
you.
interview.
Yeah, it was a lot of
Yeah.
fun. Thank you
Great.
very much.
Thank you.